Hello. Welcome to White Door Tarot, where the reader is bubbly, but the readings can get dark. But today, again, I will not be doing a reading. I am going to be explaining karma, because karma is also a commonly misunderstood, mistaught concept. A lot of what I see is that people seem to think that karma is punishment and reward for good deeds versus bad deeds. But that is also a concept, an idea that is very much rooted in the certain type of organized religion, which I talked about in my first video about unconditional love, or the frequency of love, rather. I do not believe in organized religion, just to sum it up for those that missed that video. And that is something that is very deeply rooted in my belief system, is that organized religion was specifically designed to strip people of their power that we all actually have, and to strip people of their own critical thinking skills. Because if you're following a script without knowing why you're following it, you are surrendering your autonomy to a book. And there's a reason why the Bible was rewritten multiple times by kings in their favor. It's to make people easier to control. And I think that the exact opposite of divine autonomy, of personal empowerment in my spiritual path and what I believe in, is that organized religion. And so I don't hate on people that practice it. I don't hate on people that believe in it. Everyone is entitled to believe what they want to believe. But I do think that following anything blindly without critical thinking is dangerous. So if you are practicing discretion, you are practicing your critical thinking skills, and that is still what you want to follow, go for it. I support you 100%. But it is the aspect of surrender that it requires that I don't quite agree with. So, with that being said, karma is not about punishment and reward. Karma is not sentient. Karma doesn't have some sort of mastermind in the back, controlling your life. That's not a thing. And actually, even fate and destiny are limited. Some things are fated, some things are destined, but not everything is. And even the things that are, they kind of shift around because, again, autonomy, self, free will is a thing. And so, because of domino effect, things shift around a lot. We affect one another a lot more than we think we do. For example, if I apply for a job, right, and someone else applies for a job, right, and they really, really need that job, they're unemployed, they've got 5 kids to feed, they're barely making rent. Actually, they're not even making rent anymore. They're just a step away from winding up on the streets, let's say. But I get the job when I already had a job, and I was just looking because I wanted to change the scenery, but I get the job anyway. So now that person is screwed for no particular reason. It's just that we both decided to apply to the same job. Turned out I was more qualified. The HR hiring manager didn't know their circumstance versus mine. They just picked whoever seemed a better fit. That's how we affect one another without realizing it. So now, can we say that that person not getting the job didn't get the job because of karmic debt? Because they're being punished for something that they did? No, not necessarily. It's just how the dominoes fell. So when we overemphasize the significance of events in our lives, we are also subconsciously surrendering our autonomy and power, our personal empowerment, to something else. When we overemphasize the spiritual significance, like, oh, there must have been a mastermind in the background controlling things, what we are inadvertently saying is that we have limited control over our own lives, when that is not the case. Because no matter what happens to us, no matter how the dominoes fall, we do always have the choice over how we respond and how we move forward. We always hold the reins to our own lives. And that is a scarier thought for some, especially the kind that surrender their autonomy and their free thinking to a higher power, because that means that you are responsible for where you are. And that's a harder pill to swallow than it was just bad luck. But with that being said, karma is not a sentient force. It's not a sentient force, and it's not about punishment and reward. It's not a law that says that if you do a bunch of good stuff that you're just going to have an easier life, nor is it a law that even says that if you do a bunch of bad stuff that you're going to have it harder. That's the thing. And we don't like to think that, because then where's the justice in that? You can literally stab a person in broad daylight and get away with it. Well, no, because we have cops, right? So karma is just the law of cause and effect. That's all it is. It's just the law of cause and effect. Everything that we do influences us and others. Not always in ways that we can immediately see, not always in ways that are immediately obvious to us. So, for example, I take this screwdriver and I jam it in my eye. I am going to be in a world of pain and I will probably lose an eyeball. That's a very immediate, obvious cause and effect. I did something dumb and I lost an eye. Now, let's say I leave this screwdriver in a couch somewhere. I forget about it for ages. Years down the line, somebody comes over with their kids. The kid decides to jump on the couch. This goes through their foot. Law of cause and effect. I was dumb enough to leave this somewhere where people sit, and some poor kid had to pay the price for it. That's how my action affected someone else down the line. That's all this is. Law of cause and effect. So what does that mean for us and how to navigate through life? What does that mean for, what's the benefit in that, right? The thing is, karma is not a matter of punishment and reward, but it is a matter of learning and growth. The importance of karma isn't what we get for quote unquote passing the test. It's in what we gain in wisdom from experience. So, for example, this screwdriver went through my friend's kid's foot. I'm mortified. Kid winds up in the hospital, and then they get an infection in their foot or something. Now their parents are mad at me. I'm never doing that again. That's going to leave a very strong imprint in my mind to watch where I put things, right? So now moving forward in life, I don't have to repeat that mistake, because now I'm going to be very conscious of where I put things. That's karmic debt cleared. That's suffrage that I don't have to go through again, because I learned my lesson the first time. That's all it is. It's stuff happens to us. We respond a certain way. That may be right or wrong. If it turns out to be wrong, we'll feel it. And when we feel it, we learn from it. We never do it again. And then moving forward, things get a little easier, not because bad things don't happen, but because I gained the tools to navigate those bad things a little better. Right? So karma is more tied into learning and growth. And what is the benefit of that? Not that we're going to be rewarded an easier time here for the rest of our lives. Is that we become wiser. And when you're wiser, you navigate life better. And when you navigate life better, life does get a little easier, because you choose not to go through the suffering that you don't have to go through. For example, again, because I like throwing out examples. I went through a rough relationship. I didn't learn my lesson the first time. I had a savior complex. I wanted to fix him. That was the whole thing. I wanted to fix him. Right? But that negates his autonomy. That negates his free will. Right? So I was fighting him to help him. And then that ended in the cops being called. I didn't learn that lesson that time. Not quite, because I still wound up with someone who was dealing with a lot of loneliness, a lot of isolation. And while I was with him, I figured out exactly why. And I broke that off after 5 months. And then he ended up with someone else shortly after that. That didn't go well for him either, because he didn't learn that lesson when he was with me. I stayed single for about 5 years. 5 years? Yeah, 5 years after that. And in that span of time, I have been approached by different guys. Yeah, believe it or not, I got swagger. I still got my swagger. So, anyway, I got approached by a few different guys. But I learned my lesson from those 2 times. I learned that it is not my job to fix a partner, and not in a, oh, I'm not responsible for them kind of way. It's more when we think about how hard it is for us to fix ourselves, it is nearly impossible for us to fix anyone else. The person has to want to learn, the person has to want to grow for them to make any progress. And that's not on us. And their inability to do that is not a reflection of our worth, it's a reflection of their limitations, right? So I learned that lesson the second time. And so when I get approached, I have the discernment now to determine whether or not this person is worthy of being my partner, whether or not this person has put in about as much work as I have, whether or not this person can understand me when I am trying to communicate where I'm coming from, whether or not this person has healed enough to clearly see my intentions. Because the fact of the matter is that when we are unhealed, when we are still operating from a place of wound and shame and ego, we can't see anyone else clearly either. We can't see ourselves clearly. We feel unworthy of love. We're sitting in shame. We don't see our own good qualities, but we can't see anyone else's either. Because all we see when we try to look at their intentions is malice. Oh, this person's going to hurt me. This person's secretly plotting against me. That's all we see when we are unhealed. And so the question isn't, oh, is this person good enough for me? Or no, I'm out of their league. That's not how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it as, do I have an even playing field with this person? Because I'm coming from a place of looking for the best in them. Can they do the same for me? Or is this going to turn into another thing where I'm going to have to sit there and explain myself over and over again until they trust me? Am I going to have to grovel for someone's trust? Because I'm not doing that to myself again. They either trust me or they don't. They either want to trust me or they don't. Right? So, with that being said, that is where karmic debt and our learned karmic lessons come in handy. I learned. And when I learned, it doesn't mean that people like that don't approach me anymore. It doesn't mean that I don't still attract people like that anymore. It means that I know to say no now. And I won't put myself through another 5-year relationship with people like that anymore. I can now evade the unnecessary suffering because I learned my karmic lesson. I was presented with multiple opportunities to repeat the cycle. After the second one, I said, nah, I know better this time. Right? So that's the benefit of learning our karmic lessons. Not that life gets easier, it's that we navigate it better, thus making it easier. It's about our own wisdom that we gain through those experiences. So when you live consciously and with self awareness and with awareness for your surroundings, you can start to do the math. Oh, I'm being faced with this situation. I've faced this situation before. I chose to do this, and then that happened. It ended badly. So, what did I learn from that? I learned this. Now let's try putting that into practice. Let's put it into practice. Oh, look, I didn't have to put myself through shit again. See? So, you're not being punished. You're not being rewarded. You're gaining wisdom. You're learning. That is the point of karma. But I get why that is a dissatisfying answer to a lot of people, because it's not a quick fix to anything. It's not a calculation where it's like, oh, all I have to do is do a bunch of good stuff and then my life gets easier, right? No. But that's not fair. What about the people that did bad things to me? No. There's no guarantee that bad things are going to happen to them. The only way that bad things will happen to them is if they keep repeating that cycle of bad things and they keep making the wrong choices and then they F around and find out. They mess with the wrong person, they get their ass beat. There you go. There's your karma. But that's also why I don't believe in, when people say, oh, it's okay, I'm not going to do anything, I'll let karma get him. No. Sometimes you do have to be the consequences of their actions. It's okay to not turn the other cheek and say, listen here, mother effer, because that is a consequence of their actions. Sticking up for yourself is the most spiritual thing that you could possibly do, because that is an embodiment of self-love. That is standing your ground for the sake of your dignity. Now, I'm not saying get violent, but I am saying you don't have to turn the other cheek and quote unquote be the bigger person and not say anything and just let it happen. You don't have to be passive about it. You can be your own karma. But the takeaway message here that I hope sticks is that we are all just people floundering the best that we can, doing the best that we can, making the best choices that we know to make in any given situation in our lives. And bad things happening to you is not a reflection of you. It's not a reflection of your worth. Bad things happening to us. Sometimes I hear the woo-woo crowd being like, oh, it must be karmic debt, or I must be getting punished for something. No, life just happens. It just happens because domino effect, because karma, law of cause and effect. Sometimes other people's dominoes fall on us. And that's just how it is. Because in this universe, we all affect each other, one another, one way or another, whether we know it or not. So don't blame yourself when your life gets crappy sometimes. We all hit those waves and we're all just trying to figure out our way through it the best that we know how. And the only thing that you need to do, the only obligation that you have in this life is to experience and grow and learn. That's it. That's it. So even if you take 2 steps back, even if you take 2 steps forward, as long as you're not stuck, as long as you're not holding yourself back from having more experiences, more opportunities for growth, more opportunities to put your lessons into practice, more opportunities for healing, as long as you don't stay stuck, you're doing good. You're doing okay. There's no need to feel shame about any of this. So when you encounter someone else that's going through some stuff, practice non-judgment. Practice the unconditional love that I talked about in the first video. Because that's not where there is room for judgment. Other people suffering, that's not an opportunity for judgment. That doesn't make you more quote unquote ascended than them, because nothing bad's happened to you in a while and you think that that's God rewarding you for good deeds. Because if that's the way you think, your good deeds didn't come from the heart. And you can't fake your frequency. Frequency does not lie. It only counts if you mean it. Okay, so that was my brief lesson on karma. And I will be blowing your minds in another video talking about time. Because when people talk about time is an illusion, that's not actually the whole truth. Time is real, but the linearity of it is not. So if you want to get notified when I do post that video, like, share, comment to help me out with the algorithm, subscribe, and then hit the notification button so that you get notified every time I post a video. And I will see you in the next one.